Do you struggle with masculine card designs like I do? I usually end up falling back on the same color palette or geometric shapes over and over. So today I wanted to try something a little bit different for a masculine get well card. If you've been following me, then you know that I'm on a gel press kick with some acrylic paint. So today I'm going to be using Sap Green, Caput Mortum, and Burnt Sienna. Now typically when I make masculine cards, I fall back on blues, grays, beige, and I wanted to switch things up a little bit. You know, I get tired of using the same kind of color palette and the same type of card design. So here I have the Picket Fences Waffle Squares stencil, and I've just put that directly down onto the gel press and used a piece of deli paper to pick up the paint in the negative spaces of that stencil. That's going to leave just a little bit of the paint behind with a nice pattern. I'm drying the paint a little bit because I wanted to add another color, a lighter color. This is Buff Titanium. And I didn't want to pick up the paint or smear the paint of the first layer. So I let it dry for just a little bit. Here I have a piece of 8.5 by 5.5 inch premium copy paper. I'll have all of the supplies linked down below. Now this looks great. I love this print just as it is, but I wanted to have, I have a whole lot of burnt sienna at the top, and I wanted a little bit more of that Caput Mortum. And so I'm going to add another layer. Now, I'm using the sunflower background, and normally I wouldn't use florals for a masculine card, but it's going to be so subtle that I'm not too worried about it making the card feminine. So you can see that I picked up a little bit of the paint with a baby wipe, and you see just a ghost image of that sunflower there. Here I'm going to use the grid on my glass mat and a ruler just to trim this down by tearing it to 3 3/4 inches by 5 inches. So that's a 1/2 inch smaller than an A2 size card, which is 4 1/4 by 5.5. I'm just using the ruler as a straight edge so that I can tear it straight. But if you want more of a rough edge, then you can just tear it by hand. You can decide to pop this up on foam tape. I'm going to adhere it directly to the card front or the card base. And then I stamped a sentiment on a scrap of the background panel. So I left just a little bit of that Caput Mortum across the top edge. And for the bottom edge, I just pressed it into my embossing pad. And unfortunately, you can't see my jar of embossing powder here, but I'm just dipping that edge into the metallic platinum embossing powder. And then I'll go ahead and just hold that down with my tweezers and melt that embossing powder. I used the same metallic platinum embossing powder to stamp the word hope onto the card front. And then I used the coordinating die to die cut that out of white cardstock. And so I'll get these glued down to the card front. And I'm going to use that embossed hope as a shadow for my die cut sentiment. Originally, I stamped it thinking that the metallic would be bright enough, the embossing powder would be bright enough to be able to see it on this card panel, but the background is so busy with all the texture that you just couldn't read it very well. So I decided to use that as a drop shadow and then put a white die cut sentiment on top, and I really like how this turned out. For these sentiment strips, I'll go ahead and you can see that pretty shine there. For the sentiment strips, I'll glue those directly to the card panel instead of popping them up. But what I'm going to do is just use my tweezers to curl back the top edge of the sentiment. And that just adds a little bit of extra dimension. It kind of adds an extra layer of texture. And I'm going to do that to the top and bottom edge of the gel print as well. Let me know down in the comments, do you feel like this is a good masculine color palette? Does the sunflower make this not a masculine card? Let me know your thoughts on this as a masculine card design in the comments down below. Here's a close-up so you can see all of that great texture, and I'm really loving the buff titanium that's showing through from the base and it not just being just that stark white. Thanks so much for joining me today. Be sure to thumbs up and subscribe down below if you haven't already, and I'll see you soon with more inspiration.